So that was using a I just created a web form, I'm sorry, a Windows form application that received this value here, you entered 1234566, from the web service that exists on an entirely different machine. Okay, there's a couple other ways to test that service, and I'll show you now. So let's close this. What we do is here we go. We're going to run the WCF test client tool to test that service. So we go WCF test client, and then I'm going to enter in the path to the URL to the service, and so the WCF test client opens up. This is a very handy tool to use to test services that you build, so you don't have to build a test client like we did with the Windows form back here, as you can see. So here's the get data method. So I'm going to double click that, and it takes an integer value, so I'm going to enter in, let's do the 123456, and we're going to invoke it, and it should respond with you entered 123456, and there it is. It's the same exact value that we got in the Windows form that we created over here, because it's the same piece of code that's running. Okay, and another thing that I want to show you is, instead of adding the reference as a service reference, we can use the service utility to build the necessary reference or classes that we use to reference in our client, and it's best shown. So I'm going to delete this. Delete that. Okay, so if we were to run this, the code's going to break, because notice there's no reference to these types anymore. Notice. So, and the idea is I don't want to use the reference trick. I don't want to right-click references and add the reference. I want an actual piece of, I want an actual file here that I can use as a normal class file that I would build manually. An easy way to do that is open up your Visual Studio command and run the service utility svc util, and then point it to the service, the URL where the service lives, and you see that the service utility tool downloaded the metadata from the URL that I gave it, and with that metadata it created two files, a service1.cs and an output.config. Now these two files are the two files that will be consumed by the client of the service. So let's go get those files. Or we can just yeah, let's go get those files. I'm going to add existing items, and they live in the Microsoft Visual Studio 9.0 VC, and there's one of them, and we got to show all the files here. So we got to get the service here and the output config and add that to our project here. So now notice how we have the two files that were generated by the service utility. We added it to our client project. Here's the output.config, and here's the service file. This was all generated by the service utility. Okay, so if we go back into our code, our form, our Windows form, we can get rid of this instantiation line, and I want to reference service 1 client. Call it client, and it is equal to a new service client. See, this type right here, service 1 client, is this class. There it is. This is our class right here. Partial class service 1 client. So this is all the code that's necessary to use for a client to connect to a web service, WCF web service. After, let's see, one thing we need to do before we can run this WCF client is we need to rename the output.config file to app.config file. Okay, and the app.config has all the binding information that allows us to connect to the WCF service on the server. So we can run this now. And this is our Windows form that we created. Enter in a value, and there you have it.